Hi guys, today I'm doing it on spirituality versus morality, and I chose to do this because I've been seeing a lot of things going on my Facebook where people were calling people out for belief systems that they had, talking about spiritual bypassing, talking about if people were being spiritual or not for their views that they had. And so I really wanted to give my interpretation of what spirituality is and what morality is, because I really see them as two very, very different things. And spirituality is in my humble opinion, spirituality is a search for understanding who we are. Who are we? What are we doing here on this planet? What is our place on the planet? And how do we fit in? It is a personal search, a personal journey towards self. And it's an understanding that we are human beings, have a spiritual experience. What does that mean? It's when we have awakenings and we realize that the three-dimensional world that we're taught about through the five senses of the eyes, the ears, the taste, the sound, the touch, are limited to what is really happening on the wider world, the bigger dimensions of what's really happening. So what we're seeing is that spirituality is a journey that we go on to understand who we are outside of the typical societal narrative of what we're taught from society and religion and politics and government. So we go on this journey because things start happening to us that we can't explain, magical things and synchronicities, and we become more aware and our consciousness expands and we realize that we are way more powerful than what we've ever been told that we are, and that we start seeing beyond the cages of a very small three-dimensional existence. So for me, spirituality is this journey that we go on to find out what our place is, what our purpose is, who we are in the world. And it is individual to everybody. Everyone will have their own individual spiritual experience on this planet. Some people are having it consciously, some people are having it unconsciously. Certainly this kind of situation, this lockdown is igniting a lot of people, waking a lot of people up, making people see beyond the illusion of how we thought reality was. It's recognizing some of the synchronicities and the magic that is happening at every moment. And within that spiritual journey, we can come across lots of different things, from working with our bodies, working with our minds, working with our hearts, loads of different modalities to understand the spiritual nature of who we are, which is the nature outside of the basic three-dimensional understanding of the world that we are taught. So that extrasensory perception, that other multi-dimensional layers that we can have access to. Morality, on the other hand, is very, very different. Morality is where your principles and values lie. So within your journey, you will come to a certain levels of values and principles that align with you. Now, most people's principles and values come from religion, come from society, come from parents and ancestors. So the majority of our beliefs, of our value systems when we're children, come from our immediate surroundings. As we grow to adulthood and we become more aware of our surroundings and we have more choice, we start realizing that some of those values that we took on as children no longer serve us. And therefore, we start changing our behaviour to align much more with our value systems. For example, we may turn vegetarian or go vegan because killing animals no longer connects to our own spiritual or our own alignment of self. It might be, taking vaccines or not taking vaccines, whatever it is your personal understanding and beliefs of what works for you. Now, and everyone will have a different way of looking at the world and relating to the world. So by outing people who aren't following the same beliefs and value systems and principles as your specific one, is kind of saying my spirituality is right and yours is wrong. If I'm a vegan because my spiritual belief is that I don't want to kill animals, then, and you're eating meat, therefore my spirituality is more purer than your spirituality, because my spirituality is this and your spirituality is that, and it's different, and therefore I'm more superior than you because your spirituality is wrong and mine is right. And if we get to that point, that's when we create separation and we create differences. And the whole separation of humanity is based around this: where our morality lies, where our value system lies. And what this pandemic is bringing up is where our morality lies, where our value systems are lying, where do our principles fit. And I want to make it very clear that everyone is going through their own spiritual journey. Everyone is going through their own adventure of life, and things change all the time. You might be a vegan or vegetarian today, and a few years down the line, you might not be. You might be not be now, and you might become a vegetarian tomorrow. Our morality changes as well as our beliefs, but the spiritual journey is consistent in that we are constantly understanding and learning about ourselves and opening ourselves up to understanding who we are. And as we understand more of who we are, as we understand more of our journey, our morality will change in accordance to our spiritual journey. But that is personal to us, and we need to stop looking externally what other people are doing and start taking personal responsibility for what we're doing. Stop pointing the finger at others because their spiritual journey and their morality is different to yours. It's really important that we don't create this separation, especially within what I'm seeing, the spiritual community or the conscious community, because here more than ever, it's more rife than ever. There is more judgment, more attack, more aggression in the spiritual community as to what is spiritual and what isn't than there is really outside of it. It's almost like there's a spiritual ego that says, I know what's right, I know what's spiritual, and you're not living the way I think you should live, and therefore you're not spiritual, and I'm going to call you out and I'm going to shame you for not being spiritual enough. And really it's getting to a point where it stops people from being able to live the way they want to live without that shame, without that real understanding of their own personal journey. And they need to get to wherever they need to get there on their own steam. Shaming people and calling people out for their beliefs is as unspiritual as doing what you're doing. So it's really important that we learn to nurture and support each other in the beliefs that we have, and in understanding why they've come to that beliefs. So, for example, I lived in a family where my mother and father have complete opposite views. My mother is a complete vaccine, pro-vaccine. She thinks everyone should get vaccinated. Because if you don't become vaccinated, then you are a scourge on society, basically, because you are there creating a situation where you are harming others. So she is a definite pro-vaccine. My father, on the other hand, is completely anti-vaccine, would never take a vaccine, just thinks vaccines are useless, really, and that you shouldn't take a vaccine, and certainly you shouldn't take a mandatory vaccine. Now, living in the same household of two opposing views put me in a situation where I realised that I had to come to my own decision on it, because listening to my mother or listening to my father who both believe full-heartedly what they believe meant I had to side with one or the other. So I had to come to my own personal view on it. Now, whether doesn't make my father any more spiritual than my mother for the decisions that they chose, but from their own personal journeys that they've been on, they came to that conclusion. And what I learned is that we have to all take personal responsibilities for our own journeys we're going on and what we're doing. And really the important thing at the moment is how much harmony, love and compassion are we sending out onto the planet, because there's a lot of highly stressed and anxious people out there. People are not knowing who to believe, what to believe, what the information is, what's real, what's not. And when we call people out and really attack them for their part in trying to work out for them what's going on, doesn't serve them to be able to come to their own conclusion. So it's really important that we separate and really divorce this idea that being spirituality means that you're doing something specific. You know, being spiritual isn't anything to do with anything specific. Being spiritual is going on your own personal journey to find out who you are. And whether you eat meat or you don't, whether you take vaccines or you don't, whether you're pro-Trump or you're not, whether you love Bill Gates or you don't, doesn't make you spiritual or not. What makes you spiritual is if you're living in tune with who you are, with alignment to your truth, living your life on your terms, following your heart, and feeling deeply connected with who you are and loving yourself. And the more you love yourself, the more you acknowledge who you are, the more you're following your journey, then the more spiritual you are becoming. And it makes no difference what you're doing. It's the becoming that's the most important. It is the alignment of self. And it comes back down to that Zen story of before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. It is not the action that you're doing. It is the consciousness of what you're doing. So if you are eating meat, it's the consciousness of how you're eating that meat. If you are taking vaccines, the consciousness of how you're doing it. It's in that consciousness where the shift, where the change happens. It's not in the doing, it's in the being. And this is the next step of evolutionary consciousness, is understanding that next level of awareness is the awareness of the action of which we're doing it in. How mindful are we? And why we're doing it, and that we're doing it from a full state of consciousness. And another beautiful story is, it reminds me of an old Buddhist monk was with a young Buddhist monk, and they get to a river, and there's a beautiful young woman on the edges of the river, and she can't get across, and there's no bridge. And the monk said to the woman, the old monk said to the woman, "Why don't you sit on my back and I will carry you across the river?" And so the beautiful woman, she was so grateful, she got on the back of the old monk, and the old monk with the woman on the back and the young monk crossed the river. And they left the woman at the bank of the river, and they continued in silence. And after a while, the young monk, who couldn't keep it in anymore, said to the old monk, "How could you do that? You broke your prayers of celibacy. How did you carry that woman across the river and break your vows and disavow all your monkhoodness?" And the monk turned round to the man and said, "I did her a service and I left her at the banks of the river, but you're still carrying her." And this is the thing. We look at others and we carry the stuff that other people are offering, and we shout at them and we attack them, and they are doing their own thing, and they're doing their own thing in their own way, just like that old monk. He left that woman at the banks of the river. So, you know, let people do what they need to do. If people are working out where their morality lies, where their principles lies, if they're questioning what's going on, then they need the space to be able to question that. If you don't agree with them, then go somewhere else where people do agree with you. But to have this call out of spiritual bypassing and attacking people for that doesn't serve our community. The more we're together, the more we support, the more we love, the more compassionate we are, the more loving we are, then the more we can get through this together, the more supportive we are. So I really hope that you found this talk interesting. This is a Scorpio full moon at the moment, so we are seeing a lot of high arousal at the moment, a lot of intensity. So let's be kind to each other this week. Let's be kind to people on Facebook. Let's be loving if we don't agree with what people are saying. Let's give people space to express themselves how they want to. Let's not get into a bitch fights and fisticuffs online. It really doesn't serve. And the more loving and compassionate we are to ourselves, the more we find we're loving and compassionate to others. So this is follow your path, follow your joy, follow your bliss, and let others follow theirs. And with that, thank you all so much for joining me, and see you next time. Have a wonderful evening. Bye for now.